Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Diptarup Ghosh Dastidar and I am an assistant professor in the Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Chhattisgarh. This is the third session that we are going to have on Ulysses by Lord Alfred Tennyson. So what did we do in the first two sessions? In the first session, I talked about the age, that is the Victorian age. I talked about the poet, that is Lord Alfred Tennyson, and I talked about the relationship between Tennyson and the age, Tennyson and the Queen, and a little bit about Sir Arthur Henry Hallam, Tennyson's friend, and about how the age was divided. So in the second session, I began with how the division of ages is not in watertight compartments, but instead it is pretty much fluid. So from there, we try to discuss the source behind this poem. So the sources behind this poem, and on that note, we talked about Iliad, we talked about Odyssey, both by Homer, and I told you the story of Iliad itself with all the characters: Paris, Hector, Achilles, Ulysses, Menelaus, Helen. So you know all the names now, and you know who Ulysses was, and you know why Ulysses, while returning back, I mean in the Odyssey that he comes back, that is the second epic, where does he come to? He comes to Ithaca, which is his own land, and his wife Penelope is waiting for him. So that is the Odyssey, that is the end of Odyssey, and the Ulysses that Tennyson takes is not the Ulysses of Homer, but the Ulysses of Dante in his Divine Comedy, Inferno, the first part, Inferno. So Inferno means the hellfire. The second part of Divine Comedy is Purgatorio. So Mount Purgatorio, it is a mountain where purgation happens. Purgation means you are burned, and with that burning you are purified. So purgation is purification by fire, by being burned. So after the Mount Purgatorio you have Paradiso, so paradise. But anyways, less about the epics now, more about the poem today. So today we are going to discuss two things, as I mentioned in the last session. Number one, we are going to discuss the form in which this poem is written. Second, we are going to discuss the verse structure in which this poem has been written. So firstly, what is the form in which the poem is written? The form of the poem is a dramatic monologue. Now this form, dramatic monologue, was actually pioneered not by Tennyson but by another very famous poet of this time, and we will be talking about that poet as well. His name is Robert Browning. So most of the poems that are read widely today by Browning, they are all dramatic monologues. So what exactly is a dramatic monologue, and how do you identify a dramatic monologue? So there are three markers to a dramatic monologue. Before we go to the three markers, let's understand the two words. First, we have the monologue. What is a monologue? A monologue is something which is spoken by mono person, so one person. So there is only one speaker, and that is the first thing that we get to know about a dramatic monologue. So I'll just write it down. The first thing is there is a single speaker. Therefore, it's a monologue. And another very common thing that we find in all the monologues, so for instance in this monologue, it is Ulysses, the old, derelict, decrepit Ulysses. He is the one who's speaking. In some other of the poems, for instance, in Porphyria's Lover by Browning, it is the lover. In My Last Duchess, it is the Duke of Ferrara, and well, so many others. In Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, it is the narrator himself who is speaking. But in all of these poems, that is dramatic monologues, there is a second thing which is undeniable. That is, number 2, there has to be a listener. You can't have a speaker speaking to no one. So you have a listener or a group of listeners. Now, the thing about these listeners, it may be one person, like in Dover Beach, or it may be a group. For instance, in this poem, there is more than one person on the listening side. So these listeners or group of listeners, they do not directly respond to what is being said. All right. So these people, they react, but they do not respond. So the listeners, they react, but they do not respond. So how do you come to know that, well, you have listeners in the poem? Well, simply because the single speaker who is speaking addresses them. Suddenly, all of a sudden, the speech is going on, and suddenly Ulysses, inexactly, I'll tell you the places where he suddenly starts speaking. So first of all, Ulysses says, towards the towards the later half of the poem, he says that, come, my friends, and he asks his friends to join him in his ventures. So when he says, come, my friends, he is actually addressing his friends. Now, these friends, they are not anywhere in the poem. What do they do? What do they say? We do not know. But they are definitely reacting. We understand these reactions by the other lines that the poet says or the narrator says after this. So there's another line in which he says that this is my son, mine own Telemachus. So he points to his son in the middle of his speech, in the middle of the poem. Ulysses points to his son, whose name is Telemachus. So his son's name is Telemachus. Points to his son Telemachus and says, this is my son. So we know that there is a listener, Telemachus. Also later when he says, come, my friends, there is an intended movement. So we know that there are a group of listeners who are reacting, but they are not responding to what he says because no one else speaks. There is a single speaker, therefore a monologue. Okay, so he says that this is my son Telemachus, come, my friends. And well, why does he call his friends? What does he want from his friends? Like I said in the last session, and even the one before that, that Ulysses wants to go on a journey. He is Odysseus after all. He loves to Odyssey. He loves to journey. He loves to voyage. And therefore, he is asking his friends that the way you supported me, the way you were always with me on my journeys, come on a last journey with me. I don't want to stay in this land. Now, why doesn't he want to stay in this land? We will get to know it when we discuss the verse structure. So I'll be discussing some of the first lines. So that would be very, clarifying on that respect. But moving on, we know that there is a single speaker, that is Ulysses. We know that there are listeners who are reacting. Now, I told you that this poem, if it is a dramatic monologue, then there are three things which are vital to it. So we know two of these. What is the third one? Let me just erase, let's say, I don't know. Yeah, I'll just erase this part. So that will give me a major part of the board. It's been there since the first day, right? Ulysses, Tennyson, you all know it by now. So the third thing, and I think which is very important, is that it is spoken at a dramatic moment in the life of the speaker. So we know why a monologue. Now we know why dramatic. Why dramatic monologue? Because every time the speaker is saying something, it is being spoken at a very crucial moment in their lives. So in Ulysses, you have Ulysses who is completely bored ruling his kingdom and he wants to go off on a last journey. So this is a moment where he gets to make a choice, a decision, and this is where he speaks. So this poem is like a justification as to what he's about to do next. In Robert Browning's poems like Porphyria's Lover, if you read this poem, I don't like giving spoilers, but end of the day we'll be discussing Porphyria's Lover also. So in Porphyria's Lover, he kills Porphyria, and after that he is talking about why he killed Porphyria. In The Last Duchess, the Duke of Ferrara is going to be remarried, and something has happened to his last wife. Now, what has happened, we don't know, but we come to know. And it is chilling, it is bone chilling. I'll talk about all that when I discuss, Browning. But I hope you're getting the hint that all of these poems, Dover Beach was spoken on the honeymoon. Let's say they married and they went on a honeymoon, and there's a crucial moment in their life. So it is spoken at a dramatic or crucial moment in the life of the speaker. These three things: single speaker, there should be a listener who reacts but doesn't respond, and it is spoken at a dramatic moment in the life of the speaker. These are the three major vital points, I think, which you can find in almost all of the dramatic monologues that you'll come across. So that being said, I hope that it is clear why it is a dramatic monologue. Now, I think that I should comment a little bit on what is the connection between this Ulysses of the myths and the Ulysses of Tennyson. So why has Tennyson used this Ulysses, the figure of Ulysses? And I also gave a hint in the last class how he connects the Greek times to the Victorian times. And these are times when there's a lot of development going on. People are going out on colonizing runs. So there's a scramble for colonies, like we discussed in one of the sessions. And apart from that, there is this growth in science. So knowledge, the bound of knowledge is being tested. And Tennyson, in this poem, the Ulysses in this poem, he is on a very similar search for knowledge, and he talks about this entire world as an overarching source of experiences and of knowledge. So this link between Victorian society, which wants to explore more, and Ulysses, who wants to keep on exploring, there's this amazing link between the two. Also, there's this one line in which he says that I want to sail beyond the sunset. So there is no end to how much he wants to sail, and wants to go across all the western stars, and there may be so many gulfs which come in the way. He wants to go beyond all of that, and he says, and this is where the connection between him and Arthur Henry Hallam also comes in, says that it may be that we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles where he lay. So what is this happy isles, and why does he talk about Achilles? So happy isles is kind of the Greek equivalent of the Norse Valhalla or Folkvanger. So the Happy Isles is one such place. It is also known as Elysium. Okay, so it is a place where all the battle royal, all the warriors who die in battle, they go. So all the brave souls, they reach where? They reach the Happy Isles. So Achilles, who is dead, who has died in the battlefield, he is where? He is in the Happy Isles. And Ulysses says that maybe this will be the last journey I'll go to. And in this last journey, I'll come across and maybe I'll die. And then I'll see Achilles. I'll finally meet Achilles in the Happy Isles. Now, imagine. This is not Ulysses talking about Achilles, but actually it is Lord Alfred Tennyson talking about his friend Sir Arthur Henry Hallam. Says that maybe after I die, I'll go and I'll meet my friend, and that really makes it dramatic, and it makes it emotional in a way. So the Happy Isles, and like I was saying, very similar to the Norse mythology. So this is Greek, and you also have the Norse mythology, in which you have Valhalla. So I do not know if you are if you have seen the Marvel movies, but if you have seen Thor, you might have heard these names. So Valhalla or Folk Vranger. The names are a little bit strange, I know. But yeah, so in Valhalla, what happens is that whichever brave soul that dies in battle is taken all the way to Valhalla. And Odin decides who goes to Valhalla, because Valhalla is the place of the brave. And people who are chosen by Odin, they go to Valhalla beside Odin. Folkvanger, on the other hand, is everyone else. So anyone who doesn't go to Valhalla goes to Folkvanger. So that, I think, is one way in which Tennyson deals with death of his friend, and therefore I believe that this poem is spoken at a very crucial juncture in his life. Now, in 1833, when this poem was written, that was the same year when Arthur Henry Hallam passed away, and I think that on that note, this makes a lot of sense. So I hope that I have been able to clarify the form of the poem, that is a dramatic monologue, how this poem is a dramatic monologue, and what are some of the connections that we find between the Greek times and the Victorian times. There are like way more, so there's no end to knowledge, like I said. Now I'll talk about the verse structure of the poem. So what is the verse structure of the poem? If you see the poem, it is in blank verse. So what exactly is a blank verse? How is it different from free verse? So on that note, how is it different from a heroic couplet? So let us discuss these three things. What is a blank verse? What is a heroic couplet? What is a free verse? Now, when it comes to blank verse and heroic couplet, there is a similarity in blank verse and heroic couplet, and that is both of them are in iambic pentameter. Both heroic couplet, blank verse. So I'll just write this: heroic couplet, blank verse. Both of them are in iambic pentameter, but heroic couplet is rhymed. So there are rhymes at the rhyming lines. The couplet means two lines. So the two lines, they are rhyming, and then the next two lines, they are rhyming. Then the next, so it's A, B, B, C, C, D, D. It rhymes like that. If I say you would pray, I did lose, another choose, something like that, you see. So in a heroic couplet, you have rhymed endings for two lines, whereas in iambic pentameter, in a blank verse, you have iambic pentameter lines, but they are not rhyming. So all of them, they have different rhymes in the end. What is free verse? You neither have meter nor do you have rhyme. So there's no meter, no rhyme. All right. So now a question might be coming to you: what is this iambic pentameter? How do you explain an iambic pentameter? Let's get to that now. So before that, I'll just make a very short table which I think would clarify how things are. So this is blank verse. This is heroic couplet, and this is free verse. So and this is iambic pentameter, this is rhymed, right? So in blank verse, you have iambic pentameter, but you don't have rhyme. In heroic couplet, you have iambic pentameter and it is rhymed. In free verse, you have neither. So I think that this is the easiest way in which I can explain you blank verse, heroic couplet, and free verse. So very often confused terms, because blank verse is something which is used by the romantic poets like Wordsworth, especially a lot. Wordsworth was a huge pioneer of blank verse, and he propagated the idea of blank verse as being something which is closest to the language of common man. So now let's understand what exactly is this iambic pentameter and how does it work. In order to understand the iambic pentameter, I'll begin from the very basics, and I hope that you'll understand this. Firstly, what is a syllable? So a syllable is any such sound which you can pronounce in one go without stopping. So my name is Dip Ta Roop. So you see, what do I mean in one go? When I say Dip, my mouth is closed. I cannot speak. So that is one. Dip Ta R. You see, R, my sound, it's getting blocked somewhere. And again, Roop. So 1, 2, 3. My name has 3 syllables in it. Anuj. Anuj has 2 syllables in it. Paromita has 4 syllables in it. So Paromita. Mahabharat has again 4 syllables in it. Ramayana has 3 syllables in it. So it goes like that, you know. So I hope you have understood syllables. Now going on, when we talk about syllables, in poems, we usually, in poetry, syllables come in certain formats. So in iambic pentameter, what happens? What is an iamb? So when I say dangerous, how many syllables does this have? Dangerous. Now, in dangerous, since it is one word, there will be only one accent in it. And what is an accent? An accent is a part of the word which is pronounced with more pressure. So in dangerous, you can say dangerous. It's not dangerous. It's not dangerous. It's dangerous. And so dangerous. Usually suffixes are always unaccented. So this is called an accent, and this is called unaccented. Okay, so you see, dangerous. Now there is a pattern in this. Wherever you get one accent, 2 unaccents, you call this pattern as dactylic. If you get 2 dactylics, it's a dactylic dimeter. If you get 3 dactylics, it's a dactylic trimeter. If you get 4 dactylics, tetrameter. 5 dactylics, pentameter. So that is how you get the idea of the pentameter. But what is an iamb over here? What is iambic? So an iambic is when there is one unaccent followed by an accent. So if you see this structure anywhere in the analysis of the poem that I'll be doing, I'll probably end with this. I'll write the first few lines and I'll break it down according to this. So if you see this structure, it means it's iambic. If you see this structure, this is iambic, this is trochaic. Okay, so these are the 2 structures that we have. Now, all right, so I'll just write down the first few lines. So the poem starts with a very interesting phrase. I mean, the poem, it begins with this line, and he directly addresses the people in front of him, and he says about himself that it little profits that an idle king by this still hearth among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I meet and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. So I'll just break this down now. The way we speak, the way our speech patterns work, this is how it breaks down. Look very carefully. I might do a prosody class some other day, but right now let's just understand this one. So, it little profits that an idle king. So, it little profits that an idle king. So, you get this, right? Do you see the pattern? Iambic, 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 iambic. 5 iambics in a row. What do you call 5 iambics in a row? You call it an iambic pentameter. 5 meters, pentameter. So 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, 4 meter, 5 meter. Each meter is iambic. So it's an iambic pentameter. Let's see the next line. By this still hurt among these barren crags. Again, see, iambic, 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 iambic. Amazing. So it's completely iambic pentameter. You see, matched with an aged wife, I meet and dole. See, here something interesting happens. The first one is not iambic. It is trochaic. You see, pattern is different. So what is happening here? It's a very common thing. An iambic line can start with a trochaic foot. Now, this is called a foot. So, trochaic, but then iambic. I'm sorry, I missed one here. Iambic, iambic, iambic. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. And the rest of the 2 lines, I'm not doing it over here, but believe me, they are all in iambic pentameter. So I hope that, oh my God, and I'm sweating over here. Who knew that writing this down would actually bring sweats on me? But anyways, I hope that you learned a lot in this. I hope that it was clear. The form of the poem, that is dramatic monologue, that is clear, number 1. And number 2, the verse structure, that is very messy. Iambic pentameter. So if you have any troubles, I hope that you'll be able to comment so that I can answer them. So all the best, people. I will discuss the poem. I mean, I think that the background is done. I will discuss the poem in the next session, and that would be the end of Tennyson's Ulysses. Thank you so much for bearing with me. See you again in the next video.